It's not nice. So what would you do to someone who uses the N-word? What should be done?
There should be like a small fine or something, like deter them from saying that. Like, people shouldn't be allowed to call me a like, that's a slur.
I think people should be allowed to. I think it's mean.
It's a word that's been used to oppress lesbians for like years. You shouldn't be allowed to call a gay person a That's like not okay.
I bet you won't say it again. That's America for you.
Who's jailed when she has like a child and a breastfeeding kid because she called a trans woman a man. She shouldn't have been jailed.
It's ma'am. You saw that video too?
Yes, I did.
Now, is that a slur? I'm making fun of that guy.
Oh, no. I feel like trans women aren't oppressed.
Well, he feels that way.
Yeah,
they feel that way. There are language
but they're
laws.
White men, for the most part.
What if it's a black transgender? Who wins the oppression Olympics if it's a black trans?
I always wondered what people would do if you just asked more questions when it came to this oppression Olympics. I like the way you said oppression Olympics thing. Like, is it like a hierarchy of oppression? How does that work in real life? How do you know, like, if you're oppressed or not? Like, let's say you're black. Well, let's say you're half black. Like, your mom is black and your dad is white. And you're transgender. Are you oppressed? You have a white dad, so you're mixed, but you're all like, what happens? Like, I really want to know. But anyways, let's get into the video.
Third countries. Watch, enjoy, and let me know in the comment section below what it is that you believe makes the United States the greatest country in the world. Happy 4th. Sorry to hear that you were hit by a scooter.
Yes, I was.
Earlier.
It's not fun.
So we weren't even discussing this today. We just didn't happen to have the Build the Wall poster. But it seemed like you were passionate about this. I do stand by it. I do believe that the United States is the greatest country in the world. And if you disagree with me, you're more than welcome to change my mind, Elise.
Okay, I will say I do think America is great. I just think there are some things that make it not the greatest in the world. Maybe on par with some other countries, but not greater than them.
Okay, so which countries would you say are greater than the United States, and why?
Probably countries that have universal health care and stuff like that.
Okay.
I feel like that's a big issue with America.
So, like, could you name me some countries?
Like Canada and England and stuff.
What happened? Did someone throw something at you?
No, they started laughing.
Oh, that's okay. That happens.
I know.
Usually when I say something dumb. Yeah, so it's okay. So Canada or the UK?
Yes.
You believe that, or did you say Canada or England specifically?
I said UK, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and all of those they're in. Talking about any countries?
Basically, yeah.
Okay. You believe they're better than the United States?
Not better, but I think the U.S. is on par with them. I don't think any of them are greater than, like, the other. Because
Okay.
I feel like, I just don't think America can be called the most superior country on earth when people are dying because they can't afford medication.
I do. Yeah, for a couple of reasons. Not only because our healthcare is better than those countries. By the way, did you know that I'm Canadian? I was raised in Montreal.
Oh, nice.
So, the death rates, the survival rates of serious diseases in these countries, particularly in the UK, 7 times higher if you have a serious disease or being in an emergency room than it is in the United States. The wait times, depending on the parameters that you use, can be anywhere from 2 times as long to 4 times as long. The healthcare outcomes are not better in these countries. And by the way, they're largely beholden to us providing national security effectively for the whole world because they don't have to burden that cost. So not only do I believe that obviously our healthcare system is flawed, but not only do I believe that our healthcare system is superior to those countries, particularly the country from which I migrated, to Canada, to the United States, but there would be another reason outside of healthcare. Let's assume that healthcare were better in those countries. Freedom is a big one. How can a country be better than the United States if they don't allow freedom to their citizens?
I don't think America really allows freedom to their citizens either all the way. Because once you've committed a crime, your rights are stripped from you. Right.
But we do assume that we grant everyone, we don't give any rights, we grant, or recognize is the term I should use here, I want to pick my words very carefully, recognize God-given rights to human beings here in this country that no other country recognizes.
Yeah, if you commit a crime, your rights will be taken away from you. The same thing happens in 99% of countries because you're a criminal. Yes, you need to be punished. That's common sense. Sorry, you can't vote anymore. You have to serve time if you commit a heinous act against society and civilization. I'm sorry. That's common sense. And one thing that you have to realize is, like what he said, America does cover the defense costs of other nations. That's something that people just sometimes ignore. We cover that. in NATO, we are like the strongest part of NATO. These other countries wouldn't be able to defend themselves to the extent that they do without the United States. That's why these other countries seem so amazing, because we are the ones providing the big things to them.
Namely, freedom of speech is a big one. That doesn't exist in those countries that you just mentioned. Is that not a biggie?
I feel like freedom of speech is very important. But at the same time, it's like, this is getting into the whole like freedom of speech, hate speech thing, right? Like,
No.
I mean like with freedom of speech being an important thing. I feel like there are certain things that are like more important than others.
Okay, so what's more important than the First Amendment?
Well,
What rights are more important than the freedom of assembly, the freedom of speech, freedom of the press? What rights would you say are more important for a government to recognize?
the right to life.
Okay, that's also something that we recognize.
Yes, but not entirely. If you are too broke, then America just doesn't recognize your right to life. They might say they do, but then it's, you can't afford insulin, okay, you're gonna die now. You can't afford this medical procedure, okay, you're gonna die.
Right. I think you're misunderstanding here the difference between rights and commodities. Right? You have the right to live. You have the right to seek the best health care possible for yourself. You do not have the right to force someone else to provide you with health care. You do not have the right to have somebody else create, invest, go through red tape and FDA approval process, study, become a doctor, go to medical school, get hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt, and force them to provide you with medical procedures or drugs simply because you can't afford them. That is not a right. That's a good. That's a commodity.
But that's the thing, is I think that should be a right. You should
But it doesn't
have
mean
the
that
right.
it is.
You should have the right. But that's exactly what I'm saying, though. That's why America's not the most superior, because they don't see that as a right.
Sure, but we do see, I would say this, and maybe we just won't be able to agree. Freedom of speech, to me, is more important. I think that's a much more valuable fundamental right than forcing somebody else to give me free health care. You disagree with that?
Well, I feel like, because I do feel like freedom of speech is an amazing thing. It's great that we're able to sit down and talk and have debates on whatever we want because we have that right.
Right.
But
And it doesn't exist in these other countries. We wouldn't be able to do this.
But I do believe, like, there's just a huge flaw in the fact that people are dying because they cannot afford things.
But more people are dying in these other countries because their healthcare systems are worse.
But
The mortality rates, the survival rates of diseases like cancer, terminal diseases, not to mention the diseases that are not being cured in these other countries, the major treatments are coming out of the United States because of medical innovation and research, which doesn't occur under a socialized system. So if you're talking about people dying because of healthcare, more people are dying because of lack of access to good care under socialized healthcare systems.
One thing I don't understand is why so many Americans, especially the young ones, are anti-American. Why are young people so adamant to talk about all the negative traits in the country, where they go to the extent of saying that other countries are just flat out better than the United States, where we have a 20-minute debate about why America is a good country, why America is the best, and you have a young person saying, no, it's not. This other country is better. Then when they get proven wrong, they say, well, what about this country? Then when they get proven wrong again, they say, oh, what about this country? Y'all get what I'm saying? It's like they want America to suck. They want their home country to just be terrible, and they won't accept the fact that it's not terrible. I will say this, maybe this young woman is coming from a good space. Maybe she genuinely wants America to do better, to provide more resources. But if you really break it down, America does provide a lot of resources, especially relative to other nations. We provide the resources and the freedom where you're allowed to sit in public and have these debates. And you have resources. So it's like, it's kind of sad when I see the lack of nationalism, I guess. It's like, wow. I don't know.
In the United States, no system is perfect. But are you willing to give up your freedom of speech, your Second Amendment rights? But let's just go with freedom of speech. You're willing to give that up for a worse healthcare outlook overall, provided that it's given to you at gunpoint by another taxpayer?
if I wasn't allowed to say certain things, like if I wasn't allowed to, I feel like there are things that people shouldn't be allowed to say.
Okay.
Is the thing. That's
so you
my
don't
stance.
support the first. So freedom of speech is not necessarily something you support. Now this. Okay.
I don't necessarily support people. People shouldn't be allowed to say. Like people shouldn't be able to say.
Do not say fire in a crowded theater, please.
I mean, like that. Yeah, definitely not. But that is technically like that incites a riot. Like that's already not. Like you could already get in trouble for saying
Yes.
that. Like
That's not because of speech. That's because it's a lie.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like people shouldn't be able to like. We already have restrictions on freedom of speech here. You're not allowed to incite violence against people. Like it's like
That's not a restriction
Or
on freedom
not
of
that. It's like in a crowd, you're not allowed to like.
You're trying to think of an example. It's not saying fire, aren't you?
No, I'm not. That's. But
That's what everyone says.
I'm trying to think of. You're not. You shouldn't be allowed to like. I shouldn't be allowed to go around calling people the N-word.
Why not?
Because that's a slur. Like
Sure.
that's not something
Sure.
I should be allowed to say.
Why not?
Because that's an offensive word. That's a slur.
It's an offensive word, absolutely. Someone just called me a idiot. Right? Should I be able to have these guys haul them away in cuffs?
Well, no, I don't think cuffs is. That's.
Well, what do you do? What do you mean you shouldn't be allowed to say it? What should the ramifications? By the way, people shouldn't walk around calling black people the N-word, okay? I think we both agree on that. But you said people shouldn't be allowed to.
I think there should be.
Why
like,
not?
Because that's not okay. Like
It's not nice. So what would you do to someone who uses the N-word? What should be done?
there should be like a small fine or something, like to like deter them from saying that. Like people shouldn't be allowed to call me a d-. Like that's a slur.
I think people should be allowed to. I think it's mean.
It's a word that's been used to oppress lesbians for like years. Like that's like it shouldn't be allowed. You shouldn't be allowed to call a gay person a. That's like not okay.
Why not?
Because
Saying it's not okay.
Well, here's what will happen because America is a great country. In America, if you walk up to somebody, because you do have the freedom of speech, and you do have freedom of speech, and you say a slur, you call them the F word or you call them a racial slur, and they punch you in the face. That's a beautiful aspect of freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want. But America never said what will happen to you if you do those things. That's what makes this country great. They're not going to censor your words. Yeah, you can say it. But if you walk up to somebody and say that and they punch you in the mouth, that's the country we live in. It's amazing. You can defend yourself. You can defend your honor. That's amazing. That person who punches them might get ramifications, but they might not. That's the beauty. That's the beautiful part about America. It's beautiful. You have real freedom, especially relative to other nations. So yeah, you can say it, but something might happen to you. Same way if you say something at work, technically you have freedom of speech when you're at work. But if they fire you for saying that, then they fire you. What she's trying to basically say is there are no punishments for what you say in this country. However, what I've just said is that there are punishments. There are real punishments. You cannot say whatever you want. You cannot say whatever you want. There's a threat of violence in America that if you do disrespect somebody, and they could say, okay, let's take it outside. I bet you won't say it again. That's America for you, though.
Okay, or that it's wrong, or that it's offensive, doesn't mean that it's not a right.
It's like those words have been used in oppressing these people for like a very long time.
Okay.
It's kind of like it's those.
For example, people who were in position, the N-word, people who were in position, I want to make sure that we understand and kind of save us some time. For example, with the N-word, people in positions of power, not only plantation owners, but people in government, right, who supported slavery in positions of power, use the N-word as a way to degrade and assert their power over black people, right?
Yes.
Okay. So these are people in government, people in positions of authority who use this term. Why would you want to grant the right to legislate language to people in positions of power or authority?
I just feel like
you're giving that power away to the patriarchy.
Those words specifically dehumanize people.
Sure, but the point is, someone is going to be determining what language is allowed or not, right? You want to give that right over to the government.
maybe not.
You want
the
Donald
government.
Trump to determine
No,
what you
I
can
don't
or
want
cannot?
Donald Trump.
Okay,
I don't
so the
even
next
think
guy.
Donald Trump should be the president.
Well, who cares? So the point
I
is,
feel like that's part of why America isn't superior is because of Trump.
but the point is, right now,
but
it's going to go straight to the top. You want him in charge of language?
no, I feel like it should be like a national vote. Like that's what I think.
So do you believe that all rights come from a national vote?
Well, no, but I
Okay.
feel like certain things should.
Well, okay, let me give you this as an example. In these other countries like Canada, where I come from, you have comedians who've been jailed for offensive jokes. There's actually a friend of mine named Mike Ward who was put before Human Rights Tribunal and I believe fined $150,000 or $50,000 for a joke that offended a kid from a Make-A-Wish Foundation. You have people who are arrested left and right in Europe. In the UK, there was a man who was actually, I believe, fined because he was doing a cover of Kung Fu Fighting at a karaoke bar, and an Asian person said that that was offensive to him. When you have the government determining what language is and is not acceptable, that's a very dangerous precedent to set. Where's the line? What you find offensive might not be offensive to someone else. What someone else finds offensive, who may be in power for those 4 years, may be completely acceptable to you. Why would you support giving that right over to the government? Furthermore, most movements, civil rights movements, the LGBT movement, right, the gay pride movement, these movements have been created by people who would be presumed to be underclass or the oppressed, right? And they did it through language. They did it non-violently. They got legislation passed. Why would you want to strip them of their language or grant the authority to the government to strip minorities of their language?
I'm saying that we should make it to where people that aren't of the minority can't call the people of the minority slurs against that minority.
But minorities and majorities change all the time, right? That's the whole point to a constitutional republic, to protect the rights of the minority from a majority. Anytime you grant the government the right to legislate speech, it ends badly. It's never ended well. So I just want to make sure that maybe we can move on to another issue of discussion. You believe that these countries are better than the United States because they have socialized healthcare, and it seems to me like you believe that they're better than...
I've noticed a lot of people who believe these things are basically just saying that they believe in socialism. They believe that these countries are better because the countries are more socialist. It's literally always that simple. They're socialists. They think America should have more socialism, universal health care. Obviously, it gets debunked because America has capitalism.
Exact same thing to you that you want to do to people who might use the word or you understand?
But I've been hit before with the word being hurled at me.
But they've been hit with someone calling them a tranny, or they've been hit with, God
I don't
forbid,
think tranny
being called
should
a
be
man.
called.
Being called man instead of ma'am. The point is they want to do the exact same thing to you, remove your right to speak as you would do with other people. Do you see the danger in that? And who determines that line?
I see there is a danger in it, but I feel like the thing is really it just comes down to, in the most part, like people just don't care about each other is the thing. Like,
okay, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Anyways, you guys have any suggestions for me, comment down below. It's LFR JoJo, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.